Hello there. Welcome to Legal Matters series with Lungnan Takdok. Today, I'll be trying to answer the question, can your landlord increase your rent at any time he so wishes or he desires? Now, over time, a lot of clients have contacted me to complain that their landlords are fond of arbitrarily increasing their house rents without prior notice or without even consulting them. So today, I want to examine this question that has been given to me as to whether your landlord can increase your house rent at any time he wants without prior consultation or notice. To answer this question, there are two important indices that must be considered. Now, the first indices is whether there is an existing written tenancy agreement. Of course, in every standard tenancy agreement, there is a clause inserted into it known as the rent review clause. Now, what does the rent review clause do? The answer is very simple. The rent review clause provides the duration within which a landlord can review and increase his rent, and also the duration for the notice to be given to a tenant before such increment. Now, where this is clearly stated in the tenancy agreement, it becomes binding on the landlord and the tenant. And as such, the landlord cannot arbitrarily increase this house rent without conforming with what has been agreed in the rent review clause as contained in the tenancy agreement. Now, the second indices to be considered is whether there is the rent control law in operation in your state. In some states in Nigeria, for example, Lagos State, there is the rent control law and recovery of premises law of Lagos State. Now, what does this law do? The law provides for the amount to be payable as rent in designated areas, and then it also provides for when rent can be reviewed and increased from time to time by landlords. So, if you are in a state that operates the rent control law as a landlord, you cannot arbitrarily increase your house rent without recourse to the provisions of the rent control law in your state. Because the moment you do this, a tenant who is aggrieved with the exercise of that power wrongly to increase rent can seek for redress in court and challenge such increment. And when he do that, the court is bound to set aside or reverse whatsoever increment that was made. Now, what happens where there is no written tenancy agreement between you and your landlord and there is no rent control law in operation in your state? Can your landlord increase his rent arbitrarily? I'm sorry at this point to say the answer is yes. If there is no rent control law in your state and there is no written tenancy agreement, your landlord can increase his house rent arbitrarily at any time. So, what option are you now left with? Is either you pack out of the house and find another apartment, or you simply pay the new rent as directed by your landlord. So, it is always advisable to insist on having a written tenancy agreement so that it can protect the interests of both the landlord and the tenant, and to also afford you the opportunity to defend yourself whenever there is any arbitrary act of increment of rent. It is always advisable to insist on having a written tenancy agreement that will contain a rent review clause, which will now give room for when the landlord can review his rent, so that the landlord does not act arbitrarily. And when there is a subsisting written tenancy agreement, it will be easier to challenge any landlord that wants to increase rent and go against what has been stated in the tenancy agreement. So, next time, always insist on having a written tenancy agreement. Thank you so much, and see you on our next episode of Legal Matters series with Lungnan Takdok. If you have more questions on legal issues that you want to reach out to us, please feel free to drop your questions in the comment section, and also make sure you subscribe to our channel as we continue to drop legally enriching tips to enlighten you on your rights and privileges.